Hello, everyone. This is the inaugural Magna Drive Genesis podcast. My name is Michael, and I'll be your host covering topics in the video game industry, trivia, history, and nostalgia. Today's topic retro game stores and the Switch 2. The Switch is almost 8 or 9 years old now. I think it was released in, 2017. What did it do right? What did it do wrong? What does Nintendo have next? Rumors, hot takes, and the like. The Switch's design perfectly merged the home console and the handheld. I wouldn't be surprised if more companies look at this model and form factor as their way to get into your home as a definitive home entertainment box. While I was traveling in Brazil recently, I brought my Switch with me, and I was pleasantly surprised at how it turned every TV at any given Airbnb into my gaming TV. It was convenient, fast, easy, and yeah, just a pleasure to play while on a extended road trip. And without any further ado, I'd love to introduce our first guest for episode number one, Nolan Sternkopf,
Hello.
who may introduce himself. What are you?
What am I? That's a great question. Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be the first guest. This is a fantastic concept, and I'm very excited for the podcast. Yeah, well, okay, so I'm a filmmaker in Portland who also happens to enjoy video games, gaming. I've worked at a retro game store in Oregon for over 3 years now. Um, and yeah, just kind of a an enjoyer of video games of really all eras. You and I think, met. Gosh, how long ago now? Couple years,
Probably
I think.
two, maybe 2.5 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Kind of more in the filmmaking sphere we met, but I think it's kind of cool that we also have had the overlap in the gaming sphere because you come in the shop and it's always great to see you there. So.
Yeah. Do you want to give a shout out to the game store? And this is also a good segue to introducing the topic of the day. Do you want to give a shout out to the store?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm an employee of Retro Game Trader, which is there's two locations. One's in Beaverton, one's in Hillsboro, and it's currently the largest video game store as far as like inventory goes in the Portland area, certainly, and all of Oregon. I'm fairly confident, and there- there's some debate, but I think all of the Pacific Northwest. I've yet to see a game store with larger inventory. Anyway, but yeah, it's a cool store, kind of become a big thing in the local gaming community here in Portland, and it's great to work there because I get to be around this stuff all day and meet a lot of people that are interested in it.
Yeah, it really is a gem. It's a great mom and pop video game store with a giant collection. And I could have swore I saw somewhere there. It is like the largest Switch collection. Like that's just immediately obvious when you walk in. You guys have like you have like two full walls, or you just have like a giant wall of Switch games. Like you have every Switch game.
Yeah, so that's what I've been told the entire time I've worked there, because some time back, I think before I even started, the owner kind of had this idea that he wanted pretty much like as close to every Switch game releasing as possible, and that I think kind of got out of hand because the Switch has just had so much support from third-party developers and from Nintendo themselves, and so the library for the Switch has just turned out to be this enormous thing. But the owner really loves the Switch, and it's been very successful. So he kind of stuck to his guns on it, despite how like out of hand the whole thing was getting. And the result is between the two stores, we just have this like enormous Switch section. It's like the biggest section you see first thing when you walk in the store, and yeah, like we never turn down a Switch game. We try to have
That's a good
every.
motto.
Yeah, yeah.
What's funny is
So.
that there's nothing more depressing than a retro game store, and they have a giant wall that has tons and tons of games, but everything is Madden, FIFA, really old Call of Duty,
Mhm.
all these like games that like everybody bought, but they're like more seasonal. But the Switch inventory at Retro Game Trader definitely doesn't feel like that. The whole store doesn't feel like that, which is very commendable. So our big topic of the day, the reason why you're on the show, and I asked you, what would you want to talk about if you came on to a video game podcast thing that I'm doing? And you said, I want to talk about the new Switch or the rumors of a Switch 2. And yeah, so this is a good segue. But first, I just want to ask, why do you think the Switch is so popular? It became the number one console of this generation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been interesting, and I think Nintendo hit that sweet spot that they hit in the Wii generation, um, where they've created a system that kind of has this like crazy mass appeal that doesn't have any demographic barriers. I think their big issue with the Wii U, which was a system I really liked, but the Wii U was marketed heavily as being for children, and I think it turned off the quickly growing demographic of older gamers and video game consuming, like customer base. And the Switch has done a smart thing where it's extremely accessible to younger children. It's extremely accessible to teenagers, adults, um, and with the amount of third-party support it's gotten, which I think has been pretty instrumental, there's just so much for kind of everyone on there. Uh, no matter what your niche is or your specific kind of interest in gaming is, there's so much for you on the Switch. So it's just been one of those things that's really accessible to everybody. And on top of that, you have the cool hybrid, home console handheld gimmick, which gimmick kind of sounds like a crass word for it, but it's Nintendo's like thing that they like to do for each system, and
Yeah.
it's a very cool thing, and it makes it even more accessible because now you're not even locked down to the TV. So
Yeah, I think some things that are really interesting about the Switch and the Wii, or just like the history of Nintendo consoles that got us to this point, is I think the Wii definitely did have this like super friendly, family friendly, super young kid, a kinetic. The way the controller worked was very fun for kids, or it kind of brought out this like inner child kind of personality in people that like video games are good at doing, but Nintendo in particular has like a certain amount of magic where they can kind of capture that more easily. But there was a perception that the Wii was for younger kids. The
mhm,
Wii U, even though the Switch is basically the same thing that has like a screen in the middle, the Wii U felt like kind of like this tablet that you gave to kids to keep them to like be quiet or pacified or watch YouTube videos. It seemed
right.
like it was kind of more like a Fisher Price toy sort of thing. But then the Switch, I think, really refined that in a way where they like doubled down on on an essential concept, which is like the screen and the handheld and the home console and the controllers all took from the best parts of their handheld systems and from
Mhm,
their home console systems and the ability to have the controllers be, have a movement component to them. But also, I think in Japan, consoles on the go are, and I think this also probably applied to the PSP and the PS Vita, they're just way more popular. Just like playing games on the go is more popular. And so I think that really helped Nintendo uh, become the dominant console of its day with the Switch. And it's just a fun console. It's got all the. Oh, wait, one more point. I think in the generational growth between the Wii to the Switch, third party support got way better, but that was mainly because the hardware got better so that all the ports from a Xbox One, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series could be on a Switch. And so then you've like eliminated the gap completely. So it's like any game you want to play could be on the Switch within reason.
yeah, I agree, and I think that is a good point that I think has been really instrumental in the success of the Switch, because the Wii U, um, It the gamepad, the way that was implemented, I think made it really hard for that system to get third-party support, because developers had to figure out how to implement this weird controller with a screen and potentially touchscreen controls.
Hmm.
And the Switch did a smart thing where you get the same appeal as the Wii U gamepad with it having the handheld aspect with the screen on it, and you even get the same appeal as the Wiimotes with the detachable Joy-Cons. But as far as how the Joy Cons function and the controls for your average game function, it's just like a normal controller, which I think made it a lot easier for developers to translate their game to a Switch platform and therefore support the system with software.
Yeah, it just kind of becomes more of an open system. So
Exactly.
going from like a very niche, uh very distinguishable in the market with the Wii controller to now it was really brilliant. It seems like they didn't really sacrifice very much to become more mainstream and then still keep kind of this like Nintendo charm to the handheld aspect and to the motion control aspect. But
Exactly.
it's getting old now. The Wii has been around for let's see, about 7 or 8 years now, and that's a pretty long time. I feel like the Xbox One and Xbox Series have come and gone in that time. And so there's now starting to be rumors of a Switch 2. And I have a couple of these rumors here right in front of me, and I was wondering if you wanted to give me your like take on whether or not it's going to be if that's like for sure true, maybe true, or it's like complete BS. Are you
Yeah,
game?
yeah, I love looking at these and kind of trying to play the prediction game of how legit is this and
Yeah.
how
Okay,
realistic.
so the first one I didn't list, but I think this is an important one. And you know better than me because I'm just starting to get back into video games and gaming culture. But what do you think about this idea that the Switch 2 is like just a Switch Pro? Like Nintendo might have been working on this like kind of half step increase and they decided like, oh, just based on market cycles, we'll just take all the R&D from that and then just make whatever the Switch Pro or Switch Advanced into the Switch 2. What's your take on this idea?
So it's tough because I think on one hand, the Switch has been so successful that I don't believe they're going to want to stray too far. Because they don't want to lose that. They've got a good thing going. But on the other hand, it's very out of character for Nintendo to not try to innovate and have a new angle. They haven't like since the Wii's release in 2006, every system of theirs, including the handhelds, because you had the jump from DS to 3DS, has had that kind of like that new thing about it. That the Wii had the motion controls with the Wii remote, the Wii U had the controller with the screen on it, and then the Switch, of course, is the hybrid. And with the 3DS, we implemented 3D. So there's always something Nintendo likes to do. They're constantly looking to innovate. And it would seem weird to me to have just like a very straightforward successor that's essentially just a Switch Pro because that's not usually their MO. Um, but with Nintendo, they're never predictable. They always do like the opposite of what you think they're going to do,
Yeah.
to be
So
fair.
so
So
you're betting that the new Switch coming out is going to have some sort of radical new feature that's just not compatible with what the old Switch was. That it's going to have some sort of new a gimmick is a harsh word, but it's going to have some sort of new thing that maybe yes, you can play Switch games on the new device with higher performance, but Switch 2 games are going to be somehow completely different. When it takes advantage of the new hardware, it's going to have like 3D graphics, or it's going to have like a dual screen, like it's going to be like a clamshell dual screen, like the Game Boy SP or the DS.
exactly, I think there will be some kind of innovation expansion on what the Switch is, where it'll still be like, yes, this is the Switch's successor, but there's something radically different about this that makes it immediately identifiable as a new system.
Got it. Okay, so what do you think is okay, so do you think this is highly certain, maybe not, or complete BS? So same size screen, 8 inches. Do you think they're going to go bigger or smaller?
So I've heard the 8-inch thing because the current, am I mistaken, or is the current double LED is 7 inches? I
It's either 7 or 8.
think
It's
yeah,
around that.
I think it will be bigger. I think whatever the screen ends up being will be at least an inch bigger. I think there's going to be a few things they're probably going to do that are like immediate improvements. And that seems like one of the ones that I think is a safe bet.
Okay, do you think it's going to have an OLED screen or an LCD screen?
That so the last rumor I saw was saying LCD, which is interesting, because the OLED seems to be working well for the Switch OLED. It's possible that they want to be able to do a Switch 2 and a Switch 2 OLED. So maybe it'll be kind of like the Switch where we start on LCD and get an OLED down the line. But I could see it going either way on that one.
Yeah, I think the base version is going to be LCD. And I think they launch with one model and in the future they do an OLED. I think that consumers aren't as sensitive to having like a better screen. And I think if you're that type of person who's like, I need to see the graphics really good, they're going to say, just hook it up to a TV. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so next, connected to that, do you think it's going to be 1080 or 4K? What do you think the resolution on either the native screen or onto a TV is going to be?
So this is wishful thinking, but I would hope it's 1080 handheld, or I mean 4K handheld would be cool, but I think that's very unrealistic. I think 1080 handheld is a real possibility, with 4K docked also being a very real possibility. Um, this is kind of the area though where I feel like Nintendo historically will you'll be like, ah, well, they're definitely gonna be 1080 and 4K, like that's just a given. And then they're like, nah, sorry, it's 720 and 1080 again, or
Yeah,
something
that's
like
funny.
that.
That's funny.
So I'm gonna guess 1080 or 4K, but I would not be surprised if Nintendo kind of disappoints us in this area.
Yeah, that's I feel the same way. I think they could definitely do 1080 and 4K for on-screen and TV, uh, or they could do 720 and then an OLED version comes out, in a year or two that has the increased resolution. So,
Right.
what do you think about backwards compatible with all games and backwards compatibility with accessories? Because there's a lot of controllers out there right now.
So this is one that I probably would be the most confident on to like put money down if I was betting. Was that I do think it will be backwards compatible. I think the Switch library has just been such a wild success that there's no way they're going to sever that. Especially since they're still releasing some like pretty big Switch games late in the system's life. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door just came out. And I think they'll want to allow these games to continue with strong sales and have consumers not have to worry about them not playing on the new system. As far as accessories go, that's a trickier one. I guess it depends on if the innovation thing happens where there's some sort of new angle, and if it would be too radically different to be compatible. I could see it being a thing where you could still like use the Switch Joy Cons, but they connect like a Pro controller, but they can't attach to the side of the system.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what some people are saying. So my bet is that everything is backwards compatible, and that's either if they change the media on the games, there's another slot for Switch games. But even that, I'm not too sure about because they might just say like, "Well, just keep buying a Switch." Uh,
yeah,
Originally, when the DS came out, the DS was not a replacement to the Game Boy Advance. They were like, "Oh, it's Wii, DS, and Game Boy Advance. Those are all three things we're going to support." And as the
right.
DS took off, even though it had a workaround or work backwards by having the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot in there. So I think it is likely that they keep the backwards compatibility for games and controllers, but I also see the controllers probably not being completely different, but having some new features. People are claiming that there are new buttons, like a features button or some sort of like additional select button on one of the controllers, and additional
Interesting.
back buttons, either for docking or for functionality of playing a game. But I think, and I don't know this for sure, this would be a good fact checking thing, but I think Nintendo probably makes more money off of selling new controllers than they do new systems. So I could see there being an incentive for them to not keep the backwards compatibility or making it dramatically different. One
Mm.
thing that is popping up that people seem uh, divided on is this idea that the new Switch controllers will connect magnetically to the sides of the new Switch. And so old Switch controllers will work, but they will not be able to dock or connect. So like your friends can bring their old Switch controllers, Switch 1 controllers over to your house to play, but to travel with it or to like charge, it's going to be Switch 2 only works with new Switch 2 controllers for docking, for charging, for playing on the go. Have you heard that one
Yeah,
before?
I did hear the magnetism thing, and I think that I could very well see that happening. It makes sense to me. My one hope there would be that there's some sort of like locking mechanism when it's attached, even though it is like, glued on there magnetically. Because I could see a reality where, the Joy Cons get yanked off and the
Yeah,
magnetic pole is not strong enough otherwise. Um, but yeah, no, I think that sounds very believable to me because then
yeah.
you do get the functionality, but Nintendo is also gonna make you buy some new controllers, and you're gonna get some new controllers with the system.
Yeah, there's going to be some little hook that they're going to want you to upgrade. There's going to be some incentive to just get new controllers. And yeah, I think you heard it here first. The first revision, the first thing they're going to have to admit to doing wrong is this new magnetic attachment style, and there's going to be some lawsuit with like the Mario Party 64 glove wearing you get like a blister in the middle of your palm,
Mhm.
or the sleeves for the Wii remotes with the with to prevent people from chucking the Wii remote into their TV. So this magnet thing is going to cause some sort of issue that they're going to have to backtrack on.
Yep, I could very well see that. I'm curious, do
Uh,
you think the
yeah.
new whatever the new Joy-Con are, do you think they're gonna somehow magically solve drift or
No, it's going to be the same problem. I think I'm not too familiar with this. What is the issue with the problem? I There's not enough incentive for them to care. That's too much of a niche thing for them to have as a selling point that would give them a lot of good grace and like good community feedback. But I don't think that's like a mass market concern. So what is the issue with the drift on the controllers?
Yeah, so the Joy-Con since launch have historically had this issue where they will start drifting, sometimes almost immediately out of package, and
So they
sometimes
don't keep the neutral position.
exactly they kind of veer off in one direction, and it'll worsen over time usually. Some people have gotten lucky where their Joy-Cons they've had since launch never have that issue, but for other people it'll be like brand new out of package. It'll be like that, and
Wow.
there was some major lawsuits because it was such a common issue. But I think I just heard the other day that Nintendo won all of them. So
So there was no issue.
there was no, as far as the law, you know, was concerned, Nintendo have to uh didn't have to face any consequences for it. Which does make me believe that I think it'll be better, but I don't think it will be non-existent.
Yeah,
I
I also that's an interesting point that you heard it here first, folks. Drifting is not against the law. Okay, so if Nintendo can drift, you can drift too. That there's some sort of incentive here where it's like if they fix it, that's somehow admitting that they were wrong.
yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that's too in the weeds. They're not going to care about that. They're getting a console right for launch and manufacturing is probably like way, way, way more complicated than anything that we've ever done. And so doing these little things, there's probably one guy raising his hand in the office saying, "Hey, can we fix the drift thing?" And they're like, "There's 17 other things on fire, and we got to get that right." Um, so let's see what else is there. Okay, what are your thoughts on them releasing a digital only version? So you'll have a Switch 2 that can still take cartridges or whatever the new medium is, but then there'll be a cheaper version that can only download games.
I I don't foresee it happening. It's very possible because that's kind of the new trend. PlayStation and Microsoft have both done it, but I Nintendo in some ways are known to stick to this kind of like old school sensibility about their
Hmm.
products. I think a big example of that is the fact that Nintendo does far more couch co-op games than really anybody else.
Hmm.
That was kind of given up on a long time ago, and they do a lot less online focused. So for that I could see a certain sticking to physical media kind of falling in that same category. And as a big proponent of physical media myself, I would hope that's true. Not that I'm against there being a digital only option that is cheaper. You know, it's never bad to have options and to have an affordable option.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of one of these major companies kind of like really standing by physical media, kind of like unwaveringly so. But
Uh,
maybe that's just my hope.
yeah. I think they could do a digital only version. Maybe they do that after launch. I think that there are a lot of advantages. The corporations, I think that there are a lot of advantages to digital only because then one, you have less control over your game library.
Mhm.
So I think it probably it incentivizes not buying used games, but then you like supposedly own things forever, but then there's always these like uh agreements that you have to like sign up for on their service. And then there's a lot of instances with some of these first consoles like that had good connectivity to the internet, like the 360. The It'd be funny to include the Wii in there. I guess you can include the Wii and the PS3. Like their stores are going down, or they're becoming antiquated, or certain things probably won't be working in the future. So I'm also a fan of having the physical media, but I could see Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony pushing for a future where they remove distribution chains. They don't have to deal with used games as much. They don't have to deal with third party or second party sellers. And everything just goes through their online stores. So there's probably an advantage to them doing that, but I don't think people are quite ready for it. Probably in one or two more console generation cycles, I think we would see that.
Yeah, I do think we are steering that way, and it does sadden me a little bit, but
Yeah, me
I think you
too.
are right.
What do you think about, are they going to use the same little cartridges, or are they going to use a new medium?
I think it's going to be the cartridges. They're cheap to produce. They can hold a lot of data. They've been working really well. They haven't turned off third-party developers at all. So I uh, I think whether it'll literally be the same cartridge, I think it's probably going to be like the DS to 3DS evolution, where the cartridges are technically a little different, but they use the same slot and generally look pretty much the same.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Um, So, okay, what games will it launch with? Okay, so what are your thoughts on a 3D Mario game at launch?
That'd be great, and it's definitely matches their history. They tend to do that, or at least near launch. I guess with the Switch, like Mario Odyssey wasn't a launch title, but it was within that first few months, or first 6 months rather. Oh yeah, I think it is likely, and we are. I think we're pretty overdue for one,
Do
since
you
it.
think it's just going to be Mario Odyssey 2?
No, I don't. I think if there was going to be an Odyssey 2, it would have happened during the Switch's life cycle, and I'm kind of surprised it didn't. But because we never got one, I think too much time has passed. I think it'll be an entirely new thing.
Interesting. Okay, Mario Kart game at launch.
I think that one's pretty much guaranteed. I think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, unless this has changed and I'm mistaken, um, has been the Switch's biggest seller since its release, still going strong. Um, so I think they're definitely like that's why we never got a Mario Kart 9 during the Switch life cycle. I don't think is they didn't want to cannibalize sales with 8, but now I think going into a new system, they'll be ready and comfortable to give us an entirely new Mario Kart. And
Yeah,
8 was so comprehensive. I think it's probably going to be pretty different.
yeah, I think 8 they did a great job with DLC because every time I've logged in, it's the amount of content in 8 now is so much. It's crazy. It's like
It's insane. Yeah.
it's too much content for one Mario Kart, which feels great because you get to see all the old
Mhm.
tracks and you get so much customization on carts and players, and you get so many kart racers. Um,
And it's kept people playing it for 7 years,
yes,
which is
it
awesome.
Mario Kart's always been like an infinitely playable game, and that's
Hmm.
also a great game to launch with because it incentivizes people to buy more controllers.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
very good point.
Final Fantasy VII remake on Switch.
Oh man, I I doubt it. I think there's going to be a technological increase between the Switch and this new system, but I don't think it's going to be big enough to be able to support some of those more contemporary titles. But I could be proven wrong on that, and I would like to be proven wrong on that.
Okay, I think it will happen. Maybe not as a launch game, but Square recently said something kind of like, yeah, all of our games, because we're in such dire straits, we're going to pursue a strategy where we're going to put all of our games on all systems, including the Nintendo console.
Oh wow,
Uh,
okay.
and so, what does that mean? Does that mean all games going forward? That could be the case. Certainly, I think those Final Fantasy VII remakes are going to go to the Xbox because that's just a no-brainer. It probably would be very easy for them to port. But if they
Yep.
can port it with significant downgrades and it runs at 25 frames a second, I think they actually would put it on the Switch because that would just make them a lot of cash, and they already did the work. So if they can do it with like a C minus ranking, I think they will.
That's
And
true. Yeah, I
I
could
think it
because
will
there have been
happen.
a lot that are kind of downgraded in order to make it work. That has
Yeah.
been fairly common. So yeah, no, that's I could see that.
Okay. Waluigi game at launch.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It'd be great. But Nintendo's just they will not give in. I think if that was gonna, I don't know. I think it would have happened by now, you know. But
Well,
maybe I'm
it's bound to
wrong.
happen until it happens, and then it's happened.
Yeah,
Okay. So what
I'm
is
gonna.
a
I
good?
would bet no on that though
You bet
personally.
no. That probably is a very safe bet.
Yeah,
Um Metroid Prime 4
it's got to be right. I mean, it's been.
as a launch game.
Yeah, I think so. I think it has to be. It's been so long since they announced that game now, and I understand they had the restart, but I think it's even been a good number of years now since they announced the restart.
Yeah.
So,
And it's
and the
too big of
only
a game for them
reason,
to ditch it.
yeah, like they can't just ditch it. There's been anticipation for it since they announced it in 2018. Um, I think I think the only reason we're not seeing anything of it is because they got so far along delayed that they said, okay, this might as well be the launch title that'll make it even a bigger fanfare. So
Yeah.
I think when we get the announcement of this new system, I think we will see Metroid Prime 4, and I think it will be a launch title.
Okay.
It'll be the Breath of the Wild for the Switch too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That would also be interesting to see what things might be cool in a Metroid Prime 4 as an extension of what new hardware gimmick there might be on a Switch 2. That's a
Mm.
topic for another day. And I think I have one or two more questions here. One, it would be okay, new Zelda as a launch title.
That one, I don't think as launch. I think we may very well get one within the system's life cycle, but Zelda's just like they famously take so long to make.
And they just put out Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom so recent still and was such a big game. I haven't even finished Tears of the Kingdom yet, and you know, there's just so much time you can pour into that. So I don't think they need to be in a rush to get us a new Zelda. And again, they take so long between releases on those titles anyway. I can't imagine them having one ready to go in
So
time.
so what is a title, a forgotten property that you think is likely to come back for the Switch 2, or that you really want to see but you know might not be likely?
Yeah, so
First
it's
party
interesting because
Nintendo.
sure, yeah. Well, the Switch brought back most things, and for me, the one I always wanted was Pikmin. We got it, and it was great. I think it all that's really left, as far as these major first party kind of legacy IPs is F-Zero and Star Fox, and I think an F-Zero would be an easy one for them to make. Get out, have make a lot of people happy, even though it is kind of a niche property. Racing games always do well, and it can be a little more of serious seems like the wrong word, but a bit more of a higher difficulty kind of racing title than your maybe super accessible Mario Kart.
Sure.
So
It could have like customization, it could have like some RPG elements.
yeah,
There could be like damage on the track, or there could be like weather effects. There could be it could be like a in between an arcade and a sim.
Exactly. So I think F-Zero is, I'm hesitant to say likely, but I would hope so. Uh,
Okay.
Star Fox would be great too. For whatever reason, I have a harder time seeing that coming to fruition, though. I'd say there's a solid chance it will, but maybe not right away.
I think charging $60 for either of those games is a little bit of a harder sell for Nintendo because when
Mm,
Star Fox was great, it was just the rail shooter. It was just the going
yeah,
forward in the R wing. Uh
exactly.
I think a racing game, people are used to paying more money for a racing game. I think F-Zero has like cool style to it. It's like it'd be like a sci-fi racing game, like it'd be like Wipeout with more personality. While
Yeah,
as with Star Fox, I don't think they know what to do with it because they've always tried to do like, let's make it into a strategy game. Let's make it
yeah.
into a Zelda-like 3D action adventure game. Let's add foot missions. And it's like, oh, could it fill a niche of being a third-person shooter? Well, I guess, but people have such fond memories of those first two games that I think they don't know what to add to it, and I think there is always a little bit of a fan backlash when they try to reinvent it.
Yeah, they would have to reinvent it, but it would exactly have to be in a way that doesn't upset people, which has been the barrier they've faced every time they've tried to bring back Star Fox since the 64. So, yeah, I think that's a good point as to why that one seems less likely.
Yeah. Okay, any final thoughts, any final properties on things you think they would bring back or that you would want to see come back?
That about covers it. I think because again the Switch aside from Metroid Prime, which we're getting, it really brought us everything. Um, so yeah, I hope to just see these things. Oh, you know what? A new original Nintendo title would be awesome. I would actually really like to see a new Nintendo IP.
Oh yeah, of course. um yeah, it's always I there's always a balance of like, oh, adding these like new properties to like the Hall of Fame. So like Pikmin was a great fit, Animal Crossing was a great fit, and then you get into like what? You get into like Wii Sports, Wii Fitness.
Arms.
Oh, a Splatoon. People really
Yeah,
like Splatoon.
Splatoon did well.
Yeah. So yeah, a new property would be amazing. And I think the final question I have for the whole uh Switch 2 is how does a Switch 2 influence, or how does the success of the Switch 1 influence the next generation of Microsoft and Sony consoles? Do you think that they are going to move towards something that looks like the Switch?
That's a good question. I think we've maybe seen the start of it already with the PlayStation. I forget what they actually call it, but it's like that little PS5 streamable device where you can
Hmm.
stream your PS5 system, essentially playing games on a little handheld screen that looks like a PlayStation Switch. Um, which is of course very different than the Switch, but it does seem like something that may be a consequence of the Switch domino effect. Slash also the stuff like the Steam Deck kind of coming into existence. I'm I don't know if we'll see as much influence on Microsoft, partially because I'm not sure what the future of their consoles looks like in general. It seems kind of up in the air right now, but also they seem pretty firm on keeping their like linear, it's the same thing but beefier. You know, there's not a lot of obvious difference between the Xbox Series and the Xbox One aside from the specs.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, but I could see PlayStation. I think they're gonna make sure that they're not going to be accused of copying or following too closely in Nintendo's footsteps. But I could see some influence, specifically in the whole concept of being able to play home home system games handheld, kind of continue to rear its head. And I think we've already seen it with that little streamable PlayStation thing.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think they're definitely heading that direction. And I think this is probably like the most graceful way for Microsoft to shift or pivot away from developing their own hardware. And then suddenly it just becomes like the Windows space where certain Steam Decks or certain like streamable devices are going to have like the Xbox logo licensed to them, so that like
Mm,
Acer or Samsung or somebody might make like an official Xbox, whatever you want to call it, Xbox 365 uh portable streaming device that's like has some computer functionality but is mostly like a digital only entertainment system, and it like works natively with the Xbox store, and then Sony will come out with their own one that works natively with the PlayStation Store, and then these are going to be like quick and easy ways to make your smart TV more integrated into a marketplace. And I think that's
right.
ultimately what they want.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah. Well, that's the Switch 2. Thanks for coming on, Nolan. I have more topics for us to cover in the future. If you come up with a topic, I'd love to hear what you might want to talk about next time. And yeah, I hope to see you again.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I look forward to hearing future episodes. I think this has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Next episode, we'll be talking about why indie games are doing so good and big budget AAA games are doing so bad. Write your comments on what you think we'll see from a Switch 2 or how you feel the indie versus AAA scenes are evolving. Outro music is At the Movies, Buck Rogers by Pencil Pusher. Until next time.